The morning sun gleamed over the sleek skyline of Manhattan, casting long shadows across the busy streets. Among the throng of hurried commuters, Sophie Turner, a vibrant 23-year-old with a natural zest for life, navigated the crowded sidewalk with a coffee in one hand and a stack of folders in the other. As she rounded a corner near a luxury high-rise, her heel caught on a raised slab of concrete. Time seemed to slow as she stumbled forward, knocking into a towering man in a sharp suit. His body shifted, but he didn't falter, except that in her panic, Sophie tripped over his polished shoes and sent him sprawling onto the sidewalk. "Oh my gosh! I'm so sorry!" Sophie exclaimed, rushing to help him up. The man groaned, brushing himself off. He was broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed, and clearly a professional in some form. His eyes, hidden briefly behind dark sunglasses, betrayed nothing, until a faint flicker of amusement crossed his face. "It's fine," he said carefully, standing tall again. "Just watch where you're going next time." Sophie's cheeks burned crimson. "I will. I promise. I didn't mean." Before she could finish, a second man appeared, a bulky, imposing security guard, rushing toward the scene. "Sir, are you all right?" he barked, his voice authoritative. Sophie, in a flustered attempt to help, accidentally bumped into him as well. The guard lost his balance, his large frame toppling backward into a conveniently placed trash can. "Oh no! Sophie stammered, mortified. She looked around, hoping nobody else had witnessed this chaos. From the reflective glass of the building entrance, a pair of piercing blue eyes observed the scene. Alexander Drake, CEO of Drake Industries, leaned casually against the revolving door, his expression unreadable. His usual cold, calculating demeanor didn't prepare him for the sight of Sophie's clumsy bravery. He couldn't suppress a faint, almost imperceptible smile. There was something magnetic about the way she handled herself, chaotic, apologetic, yet utterly fearless. In a city of polished, calculated people, Sophie's raw, unapologetic humanity struck him like lightning. Sophie helped the security guard to his feet, muttering endless apologies. Alexander stepped forward finally, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Everything all right here?" His voice was smooth, confident, carrying the weight of authority. Sophie froze, her eyes widening. "Why yes, sir. Everything's fine now." Alexander studied her for a long moment. He noticed the spark in her eyes, the fire behind the fumbling chaos, and something stirred within him, something rare, intrigue. The guard straightened, glaring slightly at Sophie, but Alexander waved him off with a subtle motion. "She's fine. You should thank her for your own rescue," he said, his tone measured yet amused. Sophie blinked, her mind racing. Really? Thank you for being understanding, sir." Alexander's eyes softened fractionally, and he inclined his head slightly. "You're welcome. You've made quite an impression." Sophie's cheeks flushed even deeper, and she tried to gather her belongings hastily. But Alexander's attention lingered, a quiet pull she couldn't yet understand. As she scurried down the sidewalk, still apologizing under her breath, Alexander remained, his gaze following her. For the first time in years, he felt an inexplicable pull, an irresistible curiosity towards someone utterly unlike anyone he had ever met. Little did Sophie know, this accidental collision was only the beginning. A chance encounter on a busy Manhattan street had set the wheels in motion for a story neither of them could have predicted. A story of chaos, charm, and a spark that could ignite into something neither wanted to resist. The following morning, Sophie walked into the glass and steel lobby of Drake Industries, her stomach fluttering nervously. She had received an unexpected email the night before, simply signed, "Mr. Drake would like to meet you regarding today's incident." Clutching her bag, Sophie tried to steady her racing thoughts. "Me? Why would a CEO want to meet me? I just knocked over his bodyguard." A receptionist, poised and professional, smiled politely. "Miss Turner, Mr. Drake will see you now. Please follow me." Sophie followed the assistant into a private conference room, her palms slightly sweaty. There, leaning casually against the polished mahogany table, was Alexander Drake, tall, impeccably dressed, and exuding that same cold, magnetic aura she had noticed yesterday. "Good morning, Miss Turner," Alexander greeted, his piercing blue eyes assessing her with quiet intensity. "Please, sit." Sophie nodded, attempting to compose herself. "Gee, good morning, Mr. Drake. I'm really sorry about yesterday. It was a total accident." Alexander's lips curved into a faint smile, the first real expression she had seen on him. "Yes, I gathered that. But you handled it with courage and a certain charm, I must admit." Sophie blinked, momentarily stunned. "Charm? Me? I just panicked and tripped everyone." He leaned back slightly, his hands resting on the table. "Precisely why I find it fascinating. Most people would have run away or been embarrassed. You faced it head-on. There's a rare honesty in that. It's refreshing." Sophie felt heat rise to her cheeks, a combination of flattery and nerves. I don't know what to say." Alexander studied her carefully. "You don't have to say anything. But I do want to know more about you. You're intriguing." Sophie swallowed, trying to mask her nerves with a smile. "Well, I work at a small marketing firm nearby. Nothing fancy. And, I like helping people, even when it gets me into trouble." Alexander's eyes softened slightly, a rare warmth breaking through his usual icy demeanor. "Helping people, even when it's inconvenient. That's admirable. And rare, in my experience." The conversation flowed naturally, as if they had known each other far longer than the hour they spent together. Alexander's usual guarded nature was softened by Sophie's authenticity, her laughter, and the way she spoke without pretense. At one point, Sophie accidentally knocked over a glass of water. Her face immediately turned crimson. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." Alexander chuckled quietly, shaking his head. "You really do have a knack for chaos," he said, leaning forward, his gaze holding hers. "But it's charming." Sophie's heart fluttered. Despite his reputation as a cold, calculating CEO, she felt a connection forming, an undeniable spark she couldn't ignore. Alexander cleared his throat, regaining a bit of his composure. "Miss Turner, I have a proposition. Your boldness, your honesty, it's not something I encounter often. I would like you to assist me with a project at Drake Industries. Consider it a way to get to know each other better." Sophie's eyes widened. "Assist, you? But I'm not an executive. I'm just—" "Exactly," Alexander interrupted softly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just you. Someone real. Someone unpretentious. That's what I need." Sophie hesitated, then nodded slowly. I suppose I can try. But I hope I don't mess things up." Alexander's eyes held hers, unwavering. "If you're anything like yesterday, you won't. You may even surprise me." As Sophie left the conference room, her heart racing and mind spinning, she realized that what began as an awkward accident on a Manhattan street was now evolving into something far more significant. She had caught the attention of a cold, formidable CEO, and somehow she felt that neither of them would ever be the same again. Sophie's first day assisting Alexander at Drake Industries began with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She had spent the morning preparing for tasks she wasn't entirely sure she was qualified for, but determination pushed her forward. Today was about proving herself, not only to Alexander, but to herself. Alexander greeted her in his office, sleek and minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bustling city below. He was impeccably dressed, calm and composed as always, yet there was an unmistakable warmth in his eyes when he saw her. "Good morning, Miss Turner," he said, his tone formal but inviting. "I hope you're ready. Today, we start with the market research review. I'll guide you through, but I expect honesty and attention to detail." Sophie nodded, trying to mask her nerves. "I'll do my best, Mr. Drake." "Please," he corrected, leaning slightly forward, "call me Alexander. Titles can wait." The first hours were intense. Alexander reviewed reports, graphs, and proposals while Sophie took notes and offered insights. She was nervous at first, stumbling over numbers and terminology, but Alexander's patience was unwavering. When she made a small mistake, he corrected her gently, never condescendingly. "You're learning quickly," he said after reviewing a chart. "Most people take weeks to grasp these trends. You adapt in a way that surprises me." Sophie's cheeks warmed. Thank you. I really want to do this right." Their professional dynamic gradually shifted as the day progressed. Alexander noticed Sophie's intuition, how she could spot inconsistencies or suggest creative solutions that weren't immediately obvious. He found himself smiling more often than he expected, drawn not just to her intelligence, but to her authenticity and courage. During a brief coffee break, Sophie spilled her drink again, this time onto Alexander's leather-bound notebook. Her face went red immediately. "Oh no! I'm so sorry." Alexander looked down at the spill, then back at her, and for the first time, he laughed openly. "You really have a talent for chaos," he teased, his eyes sparkling. "But it's strangely endearing." Sophie laughed nervously. "Endearing? I'm more like accident-prone." Alexander's gaze softened. "Accidents aside, you have a spark, Sophie. That spark is rare in this world." As the day turned into evening, their interactions became less about formality and more about connection. Conversations veered into personal territory. Favorite books, childhood stories, and even shared experiences of navigating a fast-paced, demanding world. The sparks between them were undeniable, subtle but electric. However, the arrival of the security team reminded them of the barriers that existed between their worlds. One guard, noticing their relaxed interaction, gave Alexander a questioning look, hinting at the unconventional situation. Alexander's jaw tightened subtly, a silent reminder that Sophie's presence, though welcomed by him, might draw scrutiny from others unaccustomed to unpredictability. Before leaving, Alexander placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sophie, today you've proven yourself, not just with your work, but with your courage and composure. Keep this up, and you might just surprise us all." Sophie felt a thrill of pride and an undeniable pull toward him. Her accidental tumble on the street had led to this, an opportunity to step into a world she never imagined, and to connect with a man whose icy exterior was beginning to melt in the warmth of her presence. As she walked home, clutching her notes and replaying the day in her mind, Sophie realized that the story that began with chaos and embarrassment had evolved into something more, a partnership, a connection, and perhaps the beginning of something neither she nor Alexander could have foreseen. The week that followed was a whirlwind for Sophie. Her days at Drake Industries were filled with meetings, reports, and brainstorming sessions alongside Alexander, each moment drawing her deeper into a world she had never imagined. The professional relationship that began with caution had subtly shifted into something warmer, more personal. Alexander, ever composed and commanding, found himself watching Sophie with increasing fascination. Her clumsiness, once a source of mild amusement, now seemed endearing. Her intelligence, creativity, and candidness challenged him in ways he had not anticipated. And yet, the closer they became, the more evident the obstacles around them. One afternoon, while reviewing a project in the glass-walled conference room, a senior executive, Margaret Langley, entered unannounced. Her sharp gaze landed on Sophie, and she cleared her throat. "Alexander," she began, her tone polite but firm, "I wanted to discuss the project timelines. And I see we have a guest today." Sophie straightened, feeling the familiar blush creeping onto her cheeks. "I'm just assisting with the review," she said softly. Margaret's gaze lingered on her, calculating. "Of course. I simply hope you understand the expectations here. Our projects are high stakes, and mistakes have consequences." Alexander's jaw tightened slightly, but he intervened smoothly. "Sophie is more than capable. She's demonstrated creativity, insight, and dedication. I trust her judgment." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. "I see. Well, we'll see how things progress." She left the room with a measured stride, leaving a tension that hung in the air. Sophie exhaled slowly. "I hope I didn't cause problems." Alexander stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand lightly on her shoulder. "You're doing fine. Don't let anyone's doubts shake you. I see your value, and that's what matters." Despite his encouragement, Sophie couldn't shake a sense of unease. She had been thrust into an environment governed by wealth, power, and rigid expectations. Her heart raced not just from Alexander's attention, but also from the pressures of proving herself worthy. Later that evening, while reviewing notes in the office, Sophie accidentally dropped her pen, rolling it toward Alexander's chair. As he bent down to pick it up, their eyes met, an unspoken connection sparking in the dim glow of the desk lamp. "Careful," he said quietly, a hint of amusement in his voice. I might start thinking you're intentionally testing my patience." Sophie laughed softly, feeling the tension ease for a brief moment. "If I were, I'd be failing spectacularly." Alexander shook his head, smiling. "No. You're doing far better than you realize. And you are beginning to matter more than you should to me." Sophie's heart skipped a beat. The admission, subtle as it was, made her realize that the connection she felt wasn't one-sided. But with growing proximity came growing tension, rumors in the office, the watchful eyes of executives, and the whisper of social barriers that neither had yet fully addressed. That night, as Sophie walked home, the city lights reflecting in her wide eyes, she felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She had found a spark, a connection that could redefine her world. But she also knew the path ahead would be complicated. In the fast-paced, high-stakes world of Drake Industries, love was not just a matter of heart. It was a challenge of courage, integrity, and trust. And Sophie was beginning to understand that to pursue it, she would need both. The Drake Industries office was unusually quiet that afternoon. Most employees had left early for a company event, leaving Sophie and Alexander alone in the vast, glass-walled workspace. The atmosphere was charged, not with tension, but with a subtle intimacy neither could ignore. Sophie was reviewing a set of marketing proposals, her focus intense, when Alexander approached, leaning casually against her desk. "How's it coming along?" he asked, his voice low, almost teasing. Sophie jumped slightly, then smiled nervously. "Almost done. I just need to double-check some figures. I don't want to make mistakes." Alexander studied her for a moment, noticing how her brows furrowed in concentration. "You're too hard on yourself," he said softly. "Mistakes happen. It's how we handle them that matters." Sophie's cheeks warmed at his words. I guess I just want to prove that I can handle this." "Handle you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander's piercing gaze softened, and a small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at his lips. "Handle me," he echoed, leaning closer. "Sophie, you have no idea how you've already captured my attention." Her heart skipped a beat. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and felt a sudden vulnerability, a raw honesty that had been building between them since the first accidental encounter. "Alexander!" Before she could finish, a knock on the door startled them. Sophie's hands flew to her notes, flustered. It's probably just someone from the office," she said quickly. Alexander shook his head, a small chuckle escaping him. "No interruptions. Just us, for a moment." Sophie's breath hitched. Her pulse quickened as Alexander stepped closer, closing the distance between them. The usually cold, calculating CEO now seemed human, real, warm, and undeniably magnetic. "I don't usually say this," he began, his voice lower, more intimate, "but there's something about you, Sophie. You're fearless in ways I didn't expect. And somehow, I can't stop thinking about you." Sophie's eyes widened. You mean that?" "I do," he said simply, his gaze unwavering. "From the moment I saw you knock over my bodyguard, I've been intrigued. Then, working with you, seeing how passionate, intelligent, and real you are, I can't ignore it." Sophie felt her cheeks burn, a mix of embarrassment and excitement. I feel the same way," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't expect to feel this about you, but I do." For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The tension, the chaos, the boundaries between employee and CEO, all melted away. They were two people, caught in a fragile, electrifying connection neither had anticipated. Alexander reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sophie, I know the world I live in can be intimidating, but I want you to know, my feelings for you are real. I want to see where this goes, if you'll let me." Sophie's heart swelled. I want that too," she whispered, her eyes shining. In that quiet office, amidst papers, screens, and the soft glow of late afternoon sunlight, an unspoken agreement formed. They would navigate the challenges together, explore the unexpected spark that had ignited between them, and embrace the journey, messy, chaotic, and utterly intoxicating. As the city skyline glimmered outside, Sophie realized that the accidental collision on a Manhattan street had blossomed into something far greater, a connection that neither she nor Alexander could ignore, a promise of love and adventure waiting just beyond the horizon. The Drake Industries office buzzed with activity, but Sophie felt a creeping tension that hadn't been there before. Whispers seemed to follow her down the corridors, and glances lingered a little too long. She tried to focus on her work, but the subtle judgments of colleagues were impossible to ignore. Alexander noticed her unease immediately. During a meeting, he caught her distracted, glancing at the office staff with worry in her eyes. After the meeting, he approached her desk. "Is everything all right, Sophie?" he asked, his tone soft but concerned. Sophie hesitated, then admitted, "I think people are talking about us. About how close we've been working together. I don't want to cause problems, Alexander." Alexander's expression darkened, his protective instincts flaring. "Ignore them. Their opinions don't matter. What matters is us, and the work we do together." Despite his reassurance, the next day brought a challenge neither of them anticipated. A high-profile client meeting was scheduled, and Sophie, as Alexander's assistant, was at the forefront. As they arrived in the conference room, Sophie overheard a few board members whispering, questioning her qualifications and suggesting she might be manipulating Alexander. Her stomach churned. She tried to ignore it, but the doubts began to creep in. "Am I really out of place here?" she wondered. Alexander, sensing her discomfort, took a subtle but decisive action. During the meeting, he spoke confidently on her behalf. "Sophie has been instrumental in preparing these proposals. Her insights are precise and valuable. I trust her judgment completely." Some heads nodded reluctantly, but a few skeptical glances remained. Sophie felt a mixture of relief and gratitude, her respect for Alexander deepening. He wasn't just a cold, powerful CEO. He was someone willing to stand up for her, even when it risked his reputation. Later, as they left the building, Alexander caught up to her in the parking garage. "Sophie," he began, his voice low, "I know it's not easy. You're facing scrutiny, gossip, but you've handled everything with courage and grace. That's why I want you with me, not just as an assistant, but as someone I trust completely." Sophie felt her eyes fill with tears. I don't know how to thank you. I was so worried I'd mess everything up." Alexander stepped closer, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "You haven't messed anything up. If anything, you've made me see that life doesn't have to be all controlled, all perfect. Sometimes, the chaos brings the most unexpected joy." Before Sophie could respond, a shadow fell across them, a board member, Richard Lowell, who had been particularly critical earlier. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Drake, there's a matter we need to discuss regarding protocol." Alexander's jaw tightened subtly, but he nodded once, then turned to Sophie. "Don't let this shake you. Whatever comes, we face it together." Sophie's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and determination. She realized that challenges were inevitable, especially in a world of power and wealth, but with Alexander by her side, she felt ready to confront them. As they drove through the city streets that evening, the neon lights reflecting on the wet pavement, Sophie reached for Alexander's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Alexander squeezed her hand gently, a rare, tender smile touching his lips. "No, Sophie, thank you. For being yourself. For showing me that even in a world so rigid and controlled, there's room for warmth, for courage, for love." And in that shared moment, amid the chaos of their careers and the scrutiny of others, Sophie and Alexander found strength in each other, a bond that would withstand misunderstandings, gossip, and any obstacle that dared to come between them. The evening air was crisp as Sophie stepped into the rooftop garden of Drake Industries, the city skyline glittering like a sea of stars behind her. Tonight was the company's annual gala, a formal event where the city's elite mingled, but for Sophie, it was the ultimate test, stepping confidently into Alexander's world with all eyes on them. Alexander was already there, leaning casually against the glass railing, his tailored suit immaculate, but his expression softer than she had ever seen. As he saw her approach, a smile spread across his face, a rare, genuine warmth that made her heart flutter. "You look stunning," he said quietly, holding out his hand. Sophie smiled, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "And you look intimidating as always." He chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." Throughout the evening, Sophie navigated conversations with board members, clients, and colleagues. There were curious glances and whispers, but Alexander's presence at her side made her feel unshakable. He introduced her confidently, speaking proudly of her insights, dedication, and courage. As the gala wound down, Alexander led Sophie to a quiet corner of the rooftop, away from the crowd. The city lights reflected in their eyes, and the soft hum of the city below created an intimate bubble around them. "Sophie," he began, taking both her hands in his, "these past weeks, you've turned my world upside down in the best possible way. Your courage, your honesty, your laughter. I can't imagine facing the future without you by my side." Sophie's heart raced. "Alexander, I feel the same. I've never expected to be part of a world like yours, but with you, it feels right. It feels like I belong." He leaned closer, their foreheads nearly touching. "Then let's face it together. No pretenses, no walls, just us." Sophie nodded, tears of happiness brimming in her eyes. "Just us." In that moment, Alexander closed the distance, and their first kiss was gentle, electric, sealing the promise they had both silently made, to trust, support, and love one another, no matter the obstacles. The following weeks brought adjustments, but also joy. Sophie grew confident navigating Alexander's world, and he softened further under her influence, learning to balance his demanding career with moments of vulnerability and love. The office gossip slowly faded as colleagues saw the genuine connection between them. Even skeptical board members came to admire Sophie's intelligence, resourcefulness, and courage. One quiet morning, Alexander surprised her in the lobby. "Miss Turner," he teased, "I believe it's time we made things official. Would you consider being by my side, not just in business, but in life?" Sophie laughed softly, her heart full. "Yes, Alexander. Absolutely yes." With that, the girl who had accidentally knocked over a bodyguard transformed her clumsy courage into the spark that lit a cold CEO's heart. From an accidental collision on a busy Manhattan street to a love that would endure, Sophie and Alexander's story proved that sometimes chaos and courage are the perfect recipe for love. As they walked hand in hand through the city streets, the skyline glowing behind them, Sophie realized that life was unpredictable, messy, and beautiful, and that she had found her place, her partner, and her happiness, all in one unexpected encounter. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Until we meet again in the next story, take care and keep the magic of imagination alive.